Hey, story fans, it's your old pal, the Writing Ref. Remember, I don't hate, I just appreciate your favorite movies. The algorithm of YouTube might have shown you movie buffs out there that SuperGirl isn't doing so well. And you try to think about why that is one reason might be the economy. You only have so many movies you can see, and if word of mouth isn't great, like it sometimes isn't for this movie, a couple $100 for a large family at the movie theater is gonna seem like you want to wait for it to go to streaming. But if your word of mouth is from critics, they aren't real happy with this film. But like often happens with films like this, audiences are having a great time and giving it a much higher score. You'll see this differential here on Rotten Tomatoes. And I think I can explain through a few called penalties why SuperGirl has the super rift between critics and fans right after the intro.
Chicken jockey. I have the power!
So, hey, story fans, before I tell you why there's such a difference in the score for this superhero film on Rotten Tomatoes between critics and audiences, click subscribe. And maybe even more important, leave a like and comment on what you thought of the movie and why you think critics might have such a differing opinion on this one. If you want to help me deliver more content every few weeks, consider buying me a coffee, which is listed in the description. There is an upkeep cost to running a channel on YouTube like this these days, especially when you haven't hit a bigger audience yet. So every bit of extra change helps. Before I call any penalties, I need to let you know I'm going to spoil 3 or 4 events in the film, and most of them are given away in the trailers. I'll be talking about the inciting incident for both main characters, which makes them cross the threshold of the ordinary world, and I will be talking about the rejection of the call during that period. I'll also be talking about the reconciliation with the father, because unfortunately it is rather weak in this film, but it doesn't ruin the film at all, and the apotheosis or major epiphany for each of the characters. Oh, and we'll be talking about the help from without, or the divine intervention, because that is going to be a big fan favorite, but critics won't care about it so much. So if you don't want any spoilers at all, then go watch the movie. It's good and worth seeing in the theaters, and then come back later. If you aren't sure if you want to see the film, and don't mind a few spoilers to explain why audience are loving this movie and critics are not, then please stick around. So here are 5 things I hear and read critics saying about SuperGirl 2026. Number 1, the movie starts out well and then gets muddled. Number 2, the movie is like a Phase 2 Marvel film and does not offer anything new. Number 3, the movie is boring except for a few scenes with Superman. Everyone seems to like these flashback scenes, in other words. Number 4, it's annoying how the movie keeps coming up with ways to limit Kara's powers. Number 5, the movie should have been Supergirl's second adventure. In other words, she was cheated out of her first adventure. So let's break down these one at a time. And I'll tell you if I think audiences are going to agree with critics, and in that case, the film will get a penalty. And if audiences are going to disagree with critics, then I will throw the red flag, and we will challenge the critics on their opinion together. The inciting incident for a 13-year-old Ruthie is her whole family is killed by the bad guy.
What you say?
But before the family goes down and dies and Ruthie survives, the family manages to destroy the bad guy spaceship. So, with her family destroyed, Ruthie goes to a bar that Kara is trying to celebrate her birthday with crypto at, and says, "Someone please come help me with my revenge. I'll give you this sword. It's priceless if you help me." So Kara gets invited. That's her It's kind of her call to action there, but Kara refuses that call to action, of course, because she doesn't want to go on any hero quest for revenge. Well, a little divine interaction happens, or fate will intervene, because the bad guys come to steal Kara's spaceship. And when they do that, Crypto is shot with a poison arrow. So Kara needs to go after the same bad guys to get the antidote. So now these two young ladies are off on their adventure. The movie starts out well, and then so critics like all that. That's the first 30 minutes or so. They like that. So it starts out well. And then critics say it gets muddled. And that is our number one point we're going to address. General audiences are going to disagree with this one, because the tension of the film always remains high. The film could be brighter and more colorful, like the comic book was. It does look a bit brown and dark at times, but it also has a lot of interesting things to look at. And it's going for a space western feel. So to me, it looks a lot like the Firefly show and the Firefly movie, rather than Guardians of the Galaxy. So I think this lack of color is an aesthetic choice to separate it from the Guardians of Galaxy comparisons. And the film kind of goes out of its way to tell you that even with a little text bar as they go from planet to planet looking for the brigands, that's what the bad guys are called. They're called the brigands. And they're called that more, like that word is mentioned way more, brigands, than even the name of the main bad guy. But we'll get to that in a minute. So you get a little, you know how sometimes movies go out of the way, Los Angeles and that kind of thing. This goes planet Epsilon 32 or whatever. I don't even remember them. And they tell you what color sun they have, because that's important to this story. And they don't want audiences to be confused what color of the sun is on each planet, because that delineates whether or not Kara has powers. And I think critics will kind of scoff at that, because there isn't a lot of difference between the color palette of the worlds at all, except one of them has like a crappy shanty city, and the rest of them are all barren wastelands, one to the next. Like I said, it kind of looks like Firefly. Critics pay attention to those things, like color dynamics and setting, but the audience is going to be kind of okay with the setting, and they're going to be more invested in the characters here. There's dozens of weird aliens, and there's a lot of tension throughout each scene, and there's never a lack of tension. And so I'm going to talk about that a lot, and audience are going to label this film fun. But does that mean we have a fast food McDonald's film on our hand? No. Mortal Kombat 2 is a fun fast food film. Scream 6 is a fast food film. This film has something going on even below the surface. And we're going to talk about how maybe audiences realize that this time, but the critics don't. So, no penalties yet, but we are throwing a challenge flag that the rest of the movie after the first 30 minutes doesn't have anything to offer, because it does. Now, critics also say the movie doesn't offer anything new. It feels like any other old superhero movie. I've heard the term Marvel Phase 2 a lot. And I think audiences will agree with this one, but I don't think they care. And that's why you're seeing a higher score among the audience. Plus, there are all kinds of things you have not seen in this film. Even though you've seen a bunch of it before, there is a lot that you have not. And that's what makes it, for me, worth seeing in the theater. You'll see a space bus with the kind of aliens who ride space buses. You'll see a teleportation fight, used creativity. Supergirl's not just flying around all the time. There's a technology that is involved in these fights. You'll see Supergirl take out an entire army. If you wanted to see that, that happens. You'll see Lobo help out a lot. And he'll also be a dick. Lobo, we will talk a lot about in this video. You'll see the heroes essentially stop a human trafficking operation for sex slaves. And that's a difficult topic to pull off, but I think audiences, especially parents in the audience, will appreciate the level that they keep it at. For instance, the girls captured are always called brides. We used to do that in other cartoon shows I used to watch as a kid. The problem here is the villain isn't anything new. And I think the villain is drawing a lot of the comparisons to other Phase 2 superhero movies. I think that they were actually really worried about this when they wrote this villain, because in the comic books, he looks kind of like just a regular guy. He looks like a Thor type character with a red beard. And he's just a guy who's really strong. So they tried to make him eccentric and weird in this movie, put little stupid things all over his face. but he just comes across as even less of a threat. There's one scene in the movie they try to make him seem like a serious threat, and the villain is the most Guardians of the Galaxy thing about the film. You'll see this film compared to Guardians a lot because James Gunn is involved in this film. Some people don't even know he's not even the director. But despite all of those comparisons, everything else, from Supergirl to all the other characters involved to Lobo, there's something special. There's something very DC about it. And when the villain succeeds in the movie, it's because, let me put it this way. The villain only ever succeeds in this movie, it seems like, because the heroes are being stupid. And on that point, I think audiences will agree. The movie tries to give a reason for the heroes to be making their stupid decisions, unlike them just, they don't feel contrived. They try to give them a reason, but you're still like, you guys are dumb. Don't, so some of the audience will allow that. They'll give it a pass. Some audience members will not. And we'll talk about that, why that is, in the last point. But right now, I'm going to call a penalty, because the saving grace of having your heroes make dumb decisions is only saved in this case by Lobo. Because of Lobo, even though he's not a major character, audiences are going to be able to set aside the comparison to other movies. All right, so penalty is penalty on Supergirl. The villain is dumb. Get a better villain. Second penalty. Heroes do dumb things in their road of trials. Don't make your heroes look dumb. They look dumb because the motivations for their dumb decisions aren't even clear sometimes. Critics are complaining that this movie is boring. Maybe because of the dumb decisions, and maybe because of it seeming like other superhero movies. It's not boring. Everyone does seem to like scenes with Superman, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Those scenes are important, but they are still missing something. Audiences are going to disagree. I think audiences being bored and audiences not being bored and critics being bored have a great deal with whether or not you can suspend your disbelief. Critics are already at a huge disadvantage for suspending their disbelief because they're professionals who train themselves to ask a bunch of extra questions while the movie's going on. And an audience can more easily turn the brain off, so to speak. And sometimes it's a harsh criticism if your movie said this is turn your brain off fun. But you don't have to turn your brain off for Supergirl. It isn't mindless. There are several deep emotional themes being attempted in this movie, and one of them is finding yourself after extreme trauma. Sometimes we know who we are, and then trauma takes our identity away. And this is done really well in this film. And Superman in particular plays off Kara very well on this theme. And I don't think that critics are feeling how this theme continues into the present day with Kara. Some critics say the Kara flashback scenes are the most interesting ones, but I think audiences will catch the ways the theme is laced throughout the film with a poison motif. Kryptonite is poison. Red suns are poison. Alcohol is poison. Kara is even vulnerable at one point. I don't know if it's because she's still got some yellow sun regenerating to do, but she drinks some poison in this film, is tricked into it, and her body still is able to fight it off slowly, but she becomes more vulnerable in that while her body's fighting off the poison. And so that was a really interesting way to weaken Kara. Well, the other theme of the movie is revenge is bad. Okay. This theme has some good moments, but it's the theme that makes the movie feel fractured. And I'll talk about that more in a little bit, but the writers are trying to connect the revenge theme and the accepting your new self after trauma and after change. And they're trying to make them merge together. And audiences are going to like the themes, but they aren't going to remember them because the emotional resonance, there isn't time to give emotional resonance to each theme. There's a triumph at the end, but the themes miss each other in their attempt to merge them. The heroes do win, but critics are looking for the deeper emotional connection that makes you remember the film. And so they're going to say that it's McDonald's because the themes that they're attempting don't land. And if Sometimes if your themes don't land, even the best critic isn't going to notice them at all. As a storyteller, I'm noticing them though. So that's why I'm doing this comparison. There are no penalties here because of that. Because the audience is still able to suspend its disbelief a lot better than the critics. So critics, there's some themes here that you need to recognize maybe on a second watch. And I think that'll change your score a little bit. Probably not much. But you can at least talk about why you felt like the movie was shallow. The film keeps limiting Kara's powers. This was an annoyance to some of my favorite critics. If a critic is annoyed by the fact that Kara keeps having to find different ways to deal with having a power limitation, there's a good chance that that person completely missed the poison motif throughout the film. Now, there is a second motif to the poison, and that's a don't freak out motif. Kara and Ruthie are constantly telling each other not to freak out. And this is connected to the finding yourself after trauma theme. Don't freak out is sort of this mentality to purge yourself of the poison. And in the end, Supergirl and Ruthie are supposed to lean on each other to clear themselves of different poisons. The film even goes so far as to literally show Kara's blood cells cleaning themselves. Now, there are several moments of being poisoned in this film. And one of them was a step too far. Unfortunately, this is the one that'll take even audiences right out of the film. And it comes right at a key moment in the heroine's journey, in this case, the reconciliation with the father. So this is the biggest spoiler in this video. So if you don't want to know the great big spoiler that I have, go ahead and skip to the 5th and final point using the bookmark on the video. Okay, still here. Kara gets lured to a planet with a green sun. The film is doing this to completely knock Kara down for the count, so that Ruthie has to shine on her own, which that's a good storytelling beat. We needed to do that. But I don't think audiences are going to buy the reason they come up with. Not only are green suns physically impossible in nature, I can refer you to maybe a science video in the comments to explain why. There's no reason the audience should believe a green sun would work the same as kryptonite. I know. There's a green sun in the book, Woman of Tomorrow, that this story is based on. But that book has all kinds of extra things that explain why the green sun's working. This is just a green sun, and suddenly she has all the symptoms of kryptonite. And I think it's asking a bit much of the audience to suspend their disbelief here, and it sure is asking too much of critics. They could have been a red sun and like a toxic atmosphere that they didn't warn Kara about. There could have been spores or something that were microscopic. All kinds of things you can do with a planet set up as a trap to avoid Kryptonians. Because all the planets have perfectly breathable atmospheres. And so the idea that the planet has two suns and that one of them is a bad color and the other one is the good color, and we have to wait for the good color to rise for her to make it through her ordeal. That's a good motif. But the green sun just distracts from everything. It's a good idea. It's a big swing, but it misses. And the audiences are going to forgive this silliness because Ruthie ends up teaming up with, you guessed it, Lobo. So even though Kara is down for the count under a green sun, having her final flashback to reconcile with her father, which, by the way, doing a flashback to have your apotheosis is not my favorite way in storytelling to handle this story beat. But Lobo being around keeps the audience invested here. So let's call a penalty really quick. But Lobo, again, saves the day. Penalty on Supergirl. High concept idea of a green sun does not work. The movie should have been Supergirl's second adventure. Now, saying that this movie would have been better as Supergirl's second adventure means what you're really saying is that go ahead and give us Supergirl's origin story. Or give us something close to Give us something where she's on Earth dealing things with Superman, because that seemed to be what people were liking. And this can be a legitimate point. If audiences are presented with this this recommendation for the movie, I think they'll agree. So what critics are really saying here is that mashing the revenge theme with the find yourself theme didn't work. And some of them might not be able to put words to it, but you could make this theme, the two themes, work together really well. But all it takes is adjusting one of the flashbacks. Superman and Kara needed to have a scene together where they were saving some people, and the choice was about killing the bad guys. And Superman says, no, don't do that. And Kara's like, but they're bad guys, we gotta kill them. Something of that nature, because that's how you bring these two themes together. And the movie just kind of needs that, or they even need a conversation about it. And they just don't have time for it. They use Superman exclusively for the finding yourself after trauma theme. And he offers nothing to the revenge theme, or really what is the don't kill the villain theme, So as much as critics like the interaction with Superman, I think the problem is that there's one key interaction with him missing. So I think audiences and critics will actually agree on this, and that the film is missing something. Not that it needs to be the whole first film, but there's some piece of glue that isn't tying the theme together. So how are we going to call this penalty? Well, to be clear, Kara does not have too many qualms about killing people in this film. She seems to limit herself somewhat, but there are some that she just straight up zaps. And especially when she's taking on a whole army. And she does know that killing poisons your soul, because somewhere out of nowhere, she decides that Ruthie will have her soul poisoned if Ruthie finishes her revenge. And the way that Kara rejects the call to action is flawed, in that it never addresses really that Kara thinks that Ruthie shouldn't go for revenge because it would be bad for her soul. And the first chance you see that is when they're both in the kind of the belly of the whale situation. So I don't think the audience members are going to think about whether there should have been a film before this one. But I think if you walked up to the average person who sees this film and you propose the idea that maybe this was actually a further along the line SuperGirl sequel, it won't ruin their enjoyment of the film, but they might nod their head in slight agreement. And I think they would have a better understanding of critics of why that is. Still, this film is something better, and I'll say it again, it's not fast food. It's been accused of being that. Because this film ends with Kara deciding to return to Earth and live there, and that makes Superman happy, but there's clearly, in the very last scene, it's not happy-go-lucky between them. They're not hugging it out. There's a lot of tension between Kara and Superman. And the audience knows it's because Kara is still way different from him when it comes to don't kill the bad guy. So maybe the film is actually trying to set up a family conflict among Superman and Supergirl in the future. Supergirl herself learns a lot about trauma and accepting herself. But her hero's journey is clearly not over. Like, if there's one for this film, she completed one, but she's got another one to complete as far as being the hopeful superhero and conquering all the poison within her. So here's what the penalty will be. Penalty on Supergirl. The two main themes of the film clash instead of working together. And therefore, some people are going to see this film as not having any worthwhile themes at all. So all in all, the critics will tell audiences this is a fun McDonald's level fast food movie, but they didn't like it all that much. And that isn't exactly correct. It's a movie that takes some big swings, and the main themes fail to connect. The villain is dumb. The characters sometimes do dumb things. I'm sure how it should have ended. Those guys who do the animations are going to have a great time with this one. But because that happens a lot in movies. but Lobo. Lobo as the divine intervention. He's the help from without, and Jason Momoa, critics will say Jason Momoa does a good job at Lobo, but he plays the role so well. He not only saves the characters when they need intervention or when they're being dumb, but he also kind of saves the whole film from being exactly what the critics claim it to be. And audiences are going to love Lobo for that. And he constantly puts the film back on track, even though he's not a major character. And so you can think of him as an outside intervention, making Supergirl worth seeing at the theater. I've been the Writing Ref, and that's been The Call. We'll see you next time.